It's that time after a tough loss. Yesterday's Rapid React show. Now we turn the page. I think it's time for a therapy podcast for our listeners. The future is still bright for the San Francisco 49ers, even after a tough loss late in the playoffs. What does the 49ers draft capital look like going forward? Are there more picks incoming to the San Francisco 49ers? Who are the building blocks for this bright future for the San Francisco 49ers franchise? Coming up on today's program right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you on this Tuesday episode, Monday evening, maybe if you're watching us on YouTube. I like to post it up early on YouTube for your evening watching and listening pleasure. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen every day here on Locked On 49ers, at BD Peacock, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. And Croc, just reading the room a little bit, seeing some of the postmortems for the San Francisco 49ers 2021 season. It was a good run. It was a really good season. And I think we've got to skew this positive now after we've slept on it, after, the feeling of going through the ups and downs of a season that now ended too soon than most 49ers, that all 49ers fans wanted, right? But overall, still a very good season, maybe a little therapy session pod and talk about some positive things the 49ers have going for them now and into the future.
Yeah, and I think, heading into the season, you knew you have Jimmy Garoppolo as starting quarterback with Trey Lance on his team. You have to make the playoffs or this season is here. And the 49ers made the playoffs, and not only did they make the playoffs, they won a couple big-time road games against the Dallas Cowboys, one of the most high-power offenses in the league. That was an amazing win. And then going out to Green Bay in sub-zero degree weather and taking down Aaron Rodgers once again. So I think just the way that whole thing turned out, that definitely is a more positive spin on how the season went. 2 playoffs wins. And I think more than anything, having the confidence that Kyle Shanahan is the coach for this team moving forward.
I teased some questions about Kyle Shanahan, and there's still some stuff out there that I want to get to, not on today's show, but maybe tomorrow with Winkler and as we go forward. Clearly, Kyle Shanahan is a good coach. Clearly, Kyle Shanahan, one of the best traits he possesses is the ability to pick out other good coaches and develop coaches. I mean, he's almost a better developer of coaches than he is a developer of players, right? It's pretty crazy.
And he has some pretty good players.
His tree around the NFL is nuts already. Dude's barely in his early 40s. And he's about to have just I don't know if it's going to happen this offseason. Maybe the fact that the 49ers didn't go win a Super Bowl, does that silver lining? Maybe the 49ers don't lose any high-end executives from the front office. Maybe they don't lose DeMeco Ryans or Mike McDaniel this offseason, so maybe they get to bring the gang back together for another year and have some cohesion, some continuity with their coaching staff and their front office for another year. And maybe, somebody gets stolen from the Rams or the Bengals coaching staff instead of DeMeco Ryans or something like that. So we'll see how that goes. But it's pretty amazing. DeMeco's going to be a head coach. And so that means just directly under Kyle Shanahan, just with the 49ers in whatever 6 years it'll be, he'll have 2 head coaches already gone from the organization. That's pretty crazy.
Potentially 3, because I saw something about McDaniel closing in on the Miami Dolphins, and they really like him, and they're thinking about him being the guy. I don't think not winning a Super Bowl is going to stop anyone from liking these guys. If you like them, heading into the NFC Championship game, I think you're going to like them just as much, whether they won it all or didn't. It kind of reminds me of the, people saying, if Jimmy Garoppolo makes that throw to Emmanuel Sanders, we're not talking about, I'm like, man, I'm not sure. I still think there would have been those conversations. I still think there would have been talks about Jimmy Garoppolo moving forward. I don't think one throw was the reason why Jimmy is in the situation that he is now. It's his game in general. And when you look at any injuries, and if you look at the coaching staff, they are good. And Kyle is doing an amazing job of developing guys. And I think the success of guys that have, whether it's directly under him or not, but just kind of that tree that he's kind of growing, You know, you look at McVay, who just beat him to head to the Super Bowl. Zach Taylor on the other side with the Bengals. You know, again, not directly under Kyle Shanahan, but still kind of falling off of that same tree. LaFleur, 49ers had to beat him to get to the NFC Championship game. You know, there are a lot of other guys as well that are getting opportunities. You mentioned Robert Saleh. The next two guys in line are definitely D'Amico Ryans and McDaniel.
Absolutely. I want to talk about draft picks that the 49ers have and what that will look like going into the future. One of the benefits of the 49ers having a good season and playing the way they did, and I know a lot of people would have rather seen the rookie play than Jimmy Garoppolo, but the 49ers did well enough with Jimmy Garoppolo and stuck with their plan that they would have earned the 29th pick in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. And that makes the trade up look a lot better, Croc, right? If you're going from 12 to 3 and you traded up a top 10, top 15 pick this year and another top 10, top 15 pick next year, that's a lot of draft capital versus what it looks like the 49ers are going to give up. At least now it's going to be the 29th pick that's going the other way because the 49ers got all the way to the NFC Championship game. So now it's a late third compensatory pick in 2022. It was the 12th pick they used to move up last year in 2021, and the 29th pick that is going to the Dolphins. And then we'll find out what that last pick is going to be, which will be decided by how the team does in 2022 and what that first round pick is in the 2023 draft. Now, look, it doesn't really matter because the 49ers weren't going to have those picks anyway. But when you consider what they did, and that's why it costs that extra first round pick to go up, because the Dolphins are looking at the Niners and saying, look, you might be good. We don't want to trade for just one first round pick if it's going to be a late first round pick, which it turned out to be. So that's why they wanted another one. And so when you look ahead to whenever we figure out what the compensation was for the 49ers moving up from 12 to 3, if it ends up being the 29th pick, which it is in the 2022 draft, and that 2023 first rounder is a late first round pick in the 20s, maybe the 30s, right? You're doing backflips.
Especially if Trey Lance is good.
That's the whole thing, because not only is the pick that you earned later, so it makes that return a lot less versus, drafting 29th is not as fun as drafting, pick 12 or something like that. So if the 49ers are in the playoffs, that means Trey Lance, first-year starter, led the 49ers to the playoffs next year. So it's a double bonus. It's a later pick, and that means you got the quarterback pick right, and he's a good player, so you're doing backflips. You give that up all day, and you're super excited about it. Now, if the 49ers maybe don't have the best season next year and Trey Lance struggles a lot, and maybe that's a top 10 pick or a top 15 pick, then maybe the heat is on a little bit. So I think as well as it went this year, and you look at the 29th pick overall, you say, okay, that's what you give. That was one of the picks that you gave up. So it wasn't a top 10 pick. It was a late first round pick. Good job. Makes the trade look a lot better. The 2023 first round pick that the 49ers give up is going to be hugely telling. Where does that pick land? If it's a top 10 pick, starts to look worse because maybe Trey Lance is further behind and struggled a lot next year. And the 49ers were a bad team with Trey Lance. And there's going to be a lot of questions. And then we'll start to see, a faction of pro Trey and anti Trey, like we just saw with Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. But the 49ers draft, if that pick that goes to the Dolphins is a late first round pick, or say pick 32, right? Obviously, you're giving that up all day if you have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, if you have a young quarterback that's going to be taking you to the playoffs in his first full season as a starter with Kyle Shanahan's offense. You're so excited and doing backflips there. So still,
if you had to guess, where does it land? I'm putting you on the spot right now. All right. I'm putting you on the spot right now. No, you know what? Save that for the next segment, because I got some things I want to say, I want to dig into, and then I'm going to come back and ask you the same question.
Okay. That's a great question for the next segment. And I want to talk about the rest of the picks the 49ers still do have for the 2022 draft coming up. But first, let's talk a little bit about betonline.net. There might be less football being played right now. The 49ers maybe aren't one of those teams that are playing in 2 Sundays, but betonline.net has way more odds and info for this playoff season still to go. For example, if you want to put money on those Cincinnati Bengals, get 4 extra points when you're doing it against the spread, or say you want to throw down cash on the plus 10,000 line of the Cincinnati Bengals winning by 43 or more in the Super Bowl. Maybe that's more your speed. And I think there is going to be a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans that are listening to this podcast in a couple of weeks. Not only props, odds, scores, totals, player performance props, the next fired head coach, where that coach is going to land. BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And I'll be very interested to see what those Super Bowl odds for the Niners in 2022 as well. It's not just football either. BetOnline.net's got basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, and coverage is the best in the business, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games as well. BetOnline, your number one online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Croc. NFL draft picks. Let me just read what the 49ers have in the draft coming up. They have their second round pick, which is number 61 overall. They have their round 3 pick, which is number 93 overall. And I've seen this reported a lot of different ways. So the 49ers didn't trade their third round pick in the Trey Lance package. They traded their comp pick that they got from Robert Saleh. So the 49ers got that third round comp. They lost both Robert Saleh and Martin Mayhew to a GM job last offseason. So what they ended up getting was first or third round comp picks. So those compensatory picks are at the end of round 3. They got one in 3 years in a row, 2021 draft, 2022 draft, and the 2023 draft. And they traded the one from the 2022 draft in that package to go get Trey Lance at number 3 overall. So they don't have the comp pick, but they do still have their regular third round pick. And I've seen a lot of misinformation about that. So if you see somebody reporting it's the Niners third round pick, it's not. It's the comp pick they traded. So the Niners still do have their second and third round picks this year. They have their fourth round pick, about 130 overall, and these are projected with where the comp picks fit in, and it'll push, there's an extra round basically in the NFL draft. So every team has 7 picks to start. There's actually an 8th round in the draft of all compensatory picks. So the league stops giving out compensatory picks when they get to 32 extra picks. That's the way it works. And there's usually a couple at the end of round 3, a few more in round 4, then a whole bunch more in rounds like 6 and 7. Niners have their original 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. They added a 6th round pick from Denver when they traded away undrafted free agent Jonas Griffith, linebacker, which that's a hell of a move. You just get a free draft pick out of nowhere because he was undrafted. You sign him, and at the end of camp, you trade him off to a team. You get a 6th round pick back the next year. So
real quick, at the moment, you're just looking at it like, oh, 6th round pick, not much. But then now you look at it on paper, and it's like, hey, that's valuable, right? That's Elijah Mitchell. That's Moore,
Mitchell,
the tackle.
DJ Jones. Right,
that's Hufanga, just guys that go in that range. That's a good football player potential.
If the 49ers are adding 5th and 6th round picks, that's gold. They've been so good at those picks, so that's not nothing. But they did trade away their 6th round pick for Charles Omenihu, so that's why they don't have their own. But they do have Denver's 6th round pick, which is higher than the 49ers 6th round pick would have been. And then they're going to add probably 2 or maybe 3 7th round comp picks as well. Overthecap.com has them projected of getting 3 7th round picks for free agent losses last year. Solomon Thomas to the Raiders, Kerry Hyder, and CJ Beathard is even going to give them a 7th round pick for signing. I think Beathard's like the very last comp pick of everybody. So the Niners might actually have the last pick in the draft potentially for that CJ Beathard comp pick and can draft Mr. Irrelevant. But we'll see exactly where those comp picks, those are just the projected comps. So the 49ers could have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks still, even though they've traded some of them away in the upcoming draft, but they won't be picking until the 60s overall. They're it's going to be a long wait to watch round 1 go by, then round 2 almost to completely go by before the 49ers are on the clock. But there's a very good chance the Niners are going to move around from there and go either up or down in round 2.
I was going to say that. Yeah. They do a lot of moving around, up, back, left, right.
John Lynch is competitive. How about this? Yeah. I got a question. I don't know if you want to get into this yet, but I did have one Twitter question about the draft, and it was, if I can find it, Cole says, which prospects do I watch first? Cornerbacks, offensive line, safety?
Golly. That question is actually tougher than I think edge rusher.
That's why we know something about John Lynch. He's active, he's competitive, he's going to move around the draft board, and he loves him some defensive linemen. I would not be shocked at all if the 49ers first pick in any draft, no matter what round they're picking first in, would be a defensive lineman. So probably start with defensive linemen, interior, edge guys. Yeah. So But corners, be looking at those. I think safety is a sneaky one. Free safety. Like I'm looking at a free safety, right, Croc? Someone that could potentially take Jimmy Ward's job if they can't continue to pay him when he becomes a free agent again. Someone who's got that ability to take the ball away. Someone who's got the range in center field. Not a Hufanga type. Not a, oh, is this a strong safety box player, linebacker? A straight up free safety is what I'm looking at maybe in the middle rounds of the draft. Try to develop the next guy potentially.
Vernon McKinley out of Oregon, ball hawk safety.
Woo! Here we go. We got
flying
names.
around.
I love it.
Yeah.
Croc is in Mobile, Alabama right now at the Senior Bowl. So I love hearing that. Okay. What's the name again, Croc?
Vernon McKinley out of Oregon. I believe he had 6 interceptions on the season. Flying around out there at safety, play some two high. He could do some single high stuff. Just a playmaker.
Love it. I absolutely love it. I was looking at a couple of weigh-ins today. Let's go down this road since you are in Mobile, Alabama today, Croc.
I am.
And as we know, the draft starts in Mobile, and it definitely does for me. I've done no joke, the last 10, 15 years, this is the least amount of draft prep I've done before the Senior Bowl ever. So I'm kind of starting from scratch right now. I'm starting late with all of this, but I'm getting excited for it, seeing the weigh-ins. And Jim Nagy's done such a good job of the Senior Bowl, and I know a lot of our colleagues are there with you in Mobile. I see some beds back there. Are you bunking up with somebody?
Man, we got a bunch of beds in here. There's 3
Yeah.
beds in here. Myself, Ryan Tracy from Locked On the NFL Draft. He's one of my hosts. He's my co-host. He's in here with me. Yeah, there's gonna be a few of us in this room.
That's awesome. So hey, if you wanna know where the real party's at, go to the Locked On Airbnb if you're in Mobile, Alabama, because that's where it's gonna be popping off.
We've got 2 Airbnbs. There's some of us in here. There's another one as well.
Oh, there's 2. Okay, that's how many Locked On folks we got over there in Mobile. I love
We're
it.
deep.
How about reuniting, Croc? We didn't talk about wide receiver on the list. The 49ers, I think, only have 3 wide receivers under contract. Debo, Ayuk, and Juwan Jennings next year. So they got some free agents there. I've been trying to give Kyle Shanahan a rangy downfield wide receiver for a while. I don't think they need to necessarily draft one of those early, but just that style of player, I think, could help. When I see Travis Benjamin on the field for the 49ers, I'm thinking, what are they going to use him for?
I got a name for you.
Okay. Does it happen to be an ex-teammate of potentially the next starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers?
It does.
Yeah, okay.
It does. Right up your alley. That's what you're looking for, right?
Love it.
And I just saw him in person. Tall, has some good size. I don't know what he weighed in at. You might see it.
I numbers right here, actually. So we're talking about Christian Watson, right? For anybody
Yes,
who
sir.
went back and watched the Bison, the North Dakota State Bison, when Trey Lance was slinging balls all over the place. Wide receiver number 1 popped. And Croc and I talked about him when we were doing our evaluations of Trey Lance last spring. We were like, hey, who's this number 1 guy? Let's keep an eye on him for the future. Well, the future is now for Christian Watson. He was invited to the Senior Bowl. He weighed in, Croc, at 6'4" flat, 6'040, 211 pounds, a little bit bigger than I expected because he's a slim guy. I thought he was going to be more like 6'2.5", 6'3". He's a legit 6'4", 211 pounds, 10-inch mitts. Those are big hands, 10-inch hands, 32 and 3/4 arm length, 77 1/8 wingspan. So, plenty of wingspan. He's a tall, rangy guy, and he's got speed too.
I think he's a 4.3 guy.
If he's 6'4" and runs a 4.3, he's not going to be available in the spot where I was hoping the 49ers to be able to draft a guy in, the second, third, fourth round range, just to be a depth piece and a developmental outside X-type wide receiver that can get deep down the field and maybe help out our strong-armed quarterback in Trey Lance and maybe have some catch radius to catch some maybe not pinpoint accurate passes, which I think would benefit him, and it benefited him in college. So Christian Watson, definitely a name to watch. But if he's putting up these crazy numbers and he actually does run a 4.3 or even low 4.4s, he's not going to be around probably even at pick 61 when the 49ers first pick.
It's going to depend on, how he moves, how he runs. I'm excited to watch him at the Senior Bowl, be able to compete against the big-time competition. A lot of questions about Trey Lance was, oh, he did it at the FCS level and, all that. Well, yeah, Watson did it at the FCS level, but has a big opportunity to go up against some of the big dogs from the FBS at the Senior Bowl. So I get to see every single one-on-one rep. Follow me on Twitter at Eric_Crocker. I will be posting videos, clips, all that stuff, especially on Christian Watson. 6'4". Again, I saw him in person. 6'4". The one knock on him, he's a little older from what I'm hearing, 24 years old. So if there is one knock, it's that.
So he's a redshirt senior. He's spent a lot of time in college.
Yeah.
He hasn't put up crazy numbers.
And had the COVID year. So I think that hurt him too.
Yeah. The speed stuff is interesting too for that level of prospect because you're not going up against elite speed every week. So seeing someone play, you're like, oh, that guy's so super fast. Then you see him against other fast guys and you realize, oh, maybe he wasn't that fast. So
Yeah.
speed is going to be big. And the fact that he weighed in that big and then you throw 4.4s on top of it, those will be fantastic numbers for Christian Watson, even at a small school. And every year it seems like there's an awesome wide receiver class. So
This
so
is
who knows?
good. This is a good one. So you talked about second round and stuff. I think he's going to be around because his receiver class is pretty loaded.
There you go. Okay, Christian Watson, a name to watch. Verone McKinley the third out of Oregon, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. There's a couple of names already. Actually, while we're talking about this, there was one more. This is from the one and only Kyle on Twitter. He says, I got a Senior Bowl wide receiver we should keep an eye on. Velos Jones Jr. Have you had your eyes on Velos Jones Jr. yet, Croc?
I have not yet, but I saw something about a Debo clone or something. I don't know, but I saw someone say throw that name around. I feel like you can't use Debo. You know, we got to find somebody else. Debo is so unique. He's so unique. You see how he ran away? I mean, obviously we had a big heartbreak watching that game, but how he ran away from those guys on that 45-yard touchdown. I mean, like when you know a guy is fast when his opponents are struggling to keep up with him, and he kind of just pushed them off and just outran everybody. Whew, Debo's just different. He's
And the
different.
last guy he beat to the corner who had an angle on him was Jalen Ramsey, right?
He's not fast enough.
Velos Jones Jr. I don't know what his weigh-in is yet. He's
It
listed
was
at
203, I believe. He was
Okay,
he was
so
like 5'11 and some change, 203.
yeah, so he's about 10 pounds lighter than Debo was, but Debo was right around that range, just under 6 feet, and he was about 215 coming out. So yeah, so a little under 6 feet, 5'11, 200 pounds, 203 pounds. Velos Jones Jr. He looks like he's got some thickness to him. Looking at his stats, I thought I had his stats up here. Where'd they go? Yeah, here we go. So he was another older prospect, actually. He went to USC, and he was there for 4 years, then transferred to Tennessee. He went to college for like 9 years. What's going on here? This doesn't make sense. I'm seeing 6 years of statistics for him in college. He only played one game as a true freshman, it looks like. So that was a redshirt year for him at 2016 at USC. Then he played 3 years at USC, then transferred. He got an extra year. He played full on 5 years. He played 10 games for 5 years, which you're not supposed to be able to do in college. So, but this year as a
Oh,
redshirt
they didn't count the COVID year
for anybody.
for anybody. The COVID year did not
Oh,
count as one of your seasons.
wow. Okay. So USC got 10 games in last year and he played in all of them.
Yep.
And he's so he's a big kick and punt return guy, which I think is key. He caught 62 balls this year for 807 yards and 7 touchdowns, as well as being a punt and kickoff, or just mostly kickoff return guy, it looks like. But he did house one this year. He housed one a couple years ago at USC as well. So, all right, I like it. Keep those names coming. And Croc, and we're going to get into this much later in the week and on through the draft process. And I'm starting to really dig into some of these prospects and be watching a ton of these guys now that there's no 49ers games to watch. And so this is the spot. You're going to want to stick here with Croc and I. He's doing the draft thing every day on Locked On NFL Draft, and we will be covering the 49ers angle of the NFL Draft all offseason long as well every day. But next, let's get back to what we were talking about there, Croc, in segment number 1 after I let the listeners know about Rock Auto. The ever-increasing numbers of makes and models. It's pretty much impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need for your specific vehicle. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? There's a question about my Mazda CX-5. They always ask me, and I always forget what the answer was. I don't even remember what kind of what version of what I've even got. And you're waiting for the person behind the counter that is looking at a screen that you can't see, and they're only going to offer you the brands that their warehouse happens to carry, and they might not have your part at all. You have computers at your fingertips that can access rockauto.com at home or even in your pocket. So save time and money using Rock Auto. Don't spend that extra 30, 50, even 100% more on chain store parts or at the car dealership when you can get it at rockauto.com. For example, for that Honda Odyssey I mentioned earlier, fuel pump at a chain store, you're looking at $350. You can get it for $216, the same part at rockauto.com. So go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. You can write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, Croc. Well, there was something we are going to get back to as it pertains to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers roster, right? I can't even remember what it was.
So we wanted to kind of just touch on the building blocks that are in place, really on both sides of the ball, and then tie that into who will be the starting quarterback, and then how that will affect the potential draft pick in 2023. So I wanted to start with just how do you feel like if you had to say one thing, like what's a hole on the offense, an area where you're like, oh man, they have to get better at that spot? Because the way I'm looking at the offense right now, there are a lot of returning guys, really the entire starting offense.
Yes. I think the 49ers, for the most part, when I start thinking about their draft and I start thinking about where I would plug in holes and where
or free agency.
or free agency, which they don't have a ton of money to spend. And I think most of the money they have to spend, they'll be spending on their own guys like DJ Jones and some really important free agents that are coming up. Jaquaski Tart, another one. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, I'm looking ahead a year or two. So let's say the entire offensive line returns. Mike McGlinchey is going to be really expensive. Trent Williams getting older. Alex Mack getting older. I really feel like the offensive line is a place where you don't want to skimp, and they need to add future starters on the offensive line. And we've seen how hard it is for rookies to come in, especially on Kyle Shanahan's offense, and be big-time contributors early in their career. They need to develop a 2023 starting offensive lineman. They got to draft that guy in 2022. So center is a big one for me because Alex Mack, I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. So a guy who's a center who can maybe kick out to guard, I think would be high on my list for things that the 49ers are looking at. And similarly, another offensive tackle that can maybe kick inside, add a lot of depth there. And I know they drafted a guy last year in the 5th round who looked pretty good earlier on in the season when he was forced into action and then got sent back on the bench in favor of Tom Compton. And I know they drafted a 2nd round guard. I don't know if Aaron Banks is ever going to be good enough to play. But I think they could always continue to add depth on the offensive line. I think you've got to add a free agent quarterback to be just a veteran, like some old guy that you hope never has to play. I don't think Nate Sudfeld is enough to be just, okay, he's the backup, period. We don't want anybody else in the room. Someone who's been around a Kyle Shanahan offense, that knows the verbiage at least, that is a veteran quarterback that's not threatening Trey Lance in the slightest to be a starting quarterback.
Josh
just a
Johnson?
veteran. Yeah, someone like that. What's his name that's being talked about as maybe even the next head coach of the Houston Texans? Josh McCown. Someone like that. Some guy's been around forever that is not a threat, but is smart and is essentially a quarterback coach with a uniform on. I would be looking at that type of player that's inexpensive in free agency to add to the quarterback room to replace Jimmy Garoppolo after you trade him away. And a rangy athletic pass catcher. Maybe, keep adding depth at tight end. We've seen George Kittle continue to get hurt. Mid-round stuff. A lot of this stuff isn't necessarily that you have to pay a 2nd round price or move up to get these guys. You could definitely with any of those positions. But I think if I had to rank on offense, I would probably start at center. It's a sneaky need for 49ers.
Okay. I like that. And we'll see about Aaron Banks and what that looks like. But I could see, second a center. You see what Creed Humphrey has done with Kansas City. And obviously, that's a rare occasion of a guy just coming in and being the best center in the NFL, being drafted after Aaron Banks, which is not ideal. And I remember seeing it too, like the way they were talking about Aaron Banks. And then they're showing his highlights. And I'm like, what y'all are saying and his highlights aren't matching up. And then obviously we watched the film. And then they show Creed Humphrey. And I'm like, well, damn. This is the way y'all talked about Banks. Like, that's how Creed Humphrey is playing. And then we see what he's become.
This is how insane the NFL is sometimes. Creed Humphrey went a whole round later than he should have because he's a left-handed snapping center. And the league, for some reason, looks at that and is like, oh, you can't take a snap from a left-handed center. It's like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. And he even told the Chiefs, he's like, dude, I'll snap right-handed. I'll just learn to do it. And Patrick Mahomes was like, why do I care if you're a left-handed center? Just snap it with your
Yeah.
left hand. It's so strange. That had such an impact on his draft status, and he was a really good player. He wasn't like a secret guy. He went to freaking Oklahoma, right?
Yeah. Well, and real quick, just to kind of elaborate a little bit more on the offensive roster and just what's there. And I like to like who's your core group and the core guys that are going to be around for the next 5 years, hopefully, right? You look at obviously the quarterback position, you're solidified there potentially. You got your running back that's there. Elijah Mitchell, he's going to hold things down, and then we'll see who, Trey Sermon, who kind of steps up. Do they bring back Raheem Mostert, stuff like that? You have your two receivers, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel. Those are the guys for sure they're going to be around for another couple of years. And you have a guy like Jawan Jennings who could step in. We've seen him be able to play well in moments. And then you have George Kittle. He's going to be around as well. So I think at least from a core group standpoint on the offense, you have those guys. And then you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. You have really good core guys at each level. First, you got Nick Bosa. He's tremendous. You can build around him and Eric Armstead. He ain't going anywhere. At the next level, you got really three good linebackers. I think Aziz, you have to sign him back. But, you got Fred Warner. At the end of the day, you got Fred Warner, and I believe Greenlaw still. So, all right, you're good there next year. And then behind there, you got Jimmy Ward. He's going to hold it down. Emmanuel Mosley, he'll be around. We'll see what happens with Ambry Thomas. He continues to develop. And then, you got to plug and play a couple of spots. What you're going to do at strong safety, what you're going to do at the nickel spot. But I say all that to say I think this team is going to be good. Now, obviously, they have to play good. They have to put it on. We've seen this team be up and down, even as early as this year. When they're 2-4 and it was not looking pretty. But on paper, this team, in my opinion, will be just as talented. They'll be very talented. So, saying all that, and that's obviously without free agents and stuff like that. They're going to get free agents, draft picks, all that. But saying all that, roster pretty good. Give me a projected record and where that 2023 draft pick, first round draft pick will land with Trey Lance at quarterback.
I believe in Trey Lance. I liked what I've seen from him, not just because of his physical ability or necessarily his play in some very small samples for the 49ers. Just from the neck up, the fact that none of it seemed too big or too fast for him, I think was a really good sign. He's smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He can be as good as he wants to be. So however hungry Trey Lance is how good he's going to be, and he is super talented. I feel like another offseason for Trey Lance and getting him ready, getting him reps with the ones, I think his upside is obviously much higher than what we've seen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Where's the floor is the question. And I think we've talked about all the talent they have and all the core players coming back. The meat and potatoes of the 49ers is going to be the same team that just went to the NFC Championship game with potential for a quarterback that could develop a higher end offense for the 49ers and Trey Lance. So this team could be better next year in a lot of ways than the 49ers have been, or at least in 2023, 2023-4 with Trey Lance, even if he struggles a little bit next year, which is totally possible. But I think there's going to be enough on the offensive side of the ball with Trey Lance and with Kyle Shanahan to scheme whatever run game, whatever open looks he needs to for his young quarterback. I think I'd be disappointed if the team wasn't over 500. I think that's the goal. So 9-8. I think 9-8 for the 49ers is a realistic place to try to be. And if you're winning 9 games, you're going to be within a game of getting yourself into the playoffs. Can they win 10 games again? I think they absolutely can. Could they potentially go, 7-10 or 8-9? Yes, they absolutely could. But I'd be shocked if they're a team that's earning a top 10 pick in the draft next year.
Right. And you got Kyle Shanahan. He does a really good job of coaching all these guys up, getting them ready to play, putting guys in the right position. And it's all about them not shooting themselves in the foot. And that's something that, your young quarterback, he's going to have to learn how to not do and just get comfortable. Just get comfortable with certain things, not play tight, not play tense. Let it rip. Let it rip. And the more he's out there, I think those OTA reps, the offseason, camp with his buddies, getting them together, All those things are going to go into him being the guy. This is his team now. And real quick before we get out of here, did you hear what he said about Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yes, I did hear that.
I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It said he's basically gonna be a friend for life, and
Yeah,
credits him a
best
lot.
friend for life. One of
Yeah.
his best friends
So
for
you know
life.
what's funny? You know what's funny? Because there's a lot of people who are Jimmy Garoppolo haters and really pro Jimmy Garoppolo stands as well. The Jimmy Garoppolo stands now can always come back to this and say, "Hey, Trey Lance is only great because of Jimmy Garoppolo's tutelage for his first year," right? So we're gonna get a
Yeah.
lot of that going forward as well. But I'm so excited. 49ers have a super talented quarterback that has all the traits you could ask for. They've got a core group of really good football players and a good coaching staff coming back next year. The 49ers are still going to be a problem in the NFC, and I can't wait to see how it all shakes out in the future. More draft content coming up from Croc and I here on the show. Winky Wednesday tomorrow. Might be some tougher questions that we ask here as we recap the season. We'll get deeper into all of the position groups we talked about, and we'll get deeper into the needs as well for this team going forward coming up. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show every day on the network. Check out Crocker on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. You are going to want to hear about all the prospects at the Senior Bowl this week. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.